Hello, and thank you for being here. My name is Sandra and Laurie from WL Costa Properties, and I'm joined by my husband and co-founder, Warner Laurie. Today we're in our office and in our hometown in Benalmadena, and we're going to be talking about all things Benalmadena, right?
Absolutely.
What makes it special, why it's our home, and why we would choose it again and again. I think the important thing to say is that no matter where you choose on the Costa del Sol, it's going to be wonderful. But we really want to talk about why Benalmadena, or Benalmadena as the foreigners call it, really is a hidden gem, and really just lift the lid on all of the things that make it special and why we would choose it just time and time again. Okay, Warner, let's really talk about, from your experience, why you love Benalmadena and why you chose to make it your home.
I'm very biased. Benalmadena is, for me, the best place in the Costa del Sol. But why is that? Why did we choose to bring our children here and to start a life here? I think it has something for everybody. And I like the idea that Benalmadena has three parts. So you have Benalmadena Pueblo, which is the old part. Then you have Arroyo de la Miel, which is like the town centre. And then you have Benalmadena Costa, where you have the beautiful marina, all the beach bars. And I love that it has, and then in between that, you have so much cosmopolitan nationalities coming to Benalmadena. So it's a great place. Why do you love Benalmadena?
No, I totally agree with you in terms that it has something for everyone. I think what makes it special and different to its neighbouring towns of Torremolinos and Fuengirola is exactly as you say, it has those three beautiful areas. So the Pueblo, where, if your thing is more sitting in the cafes, on the cobbled streets, watching the world go by and really tapping into the culture, that's the space for you, right? If you want a little bit more of the nightlife, experiencing some great restaurants, pop down to the marina, where I believe the marina has won the accolade of world's best marina a few times, but don't quote me perfectly on that. But, when we have visitors coming over, for example, we'll find our way down to the marina because there's a lot happening down there. That's directly then connected to the coastline and the beautiful beaches. But if you want to experience that more local way of life, you've also got Arroyo de la Miel, where our office is based. You have the local train station there, you have your local businesses, some great Spanish restaurants. And I think that's what makes Benalmadena special. So whether you are somebody who is following that dream of retiring in Spain, or whether you're that family who's relocating to the Costa del Sol for that better lifestyle for your family, Benalmadena will have an area that will connect with you irregardless of what your appetites are, irregardless of what you're looking for. You're going to find it in Benalmadena. If I think back to my own experience and what made it really special for me, why I loved Benalmadena, is really the family element. I talk a lot on here and online about, we're also being a mum of two. And Benalmadena just gave our family that outdoor lifestyle, that Mediterranean lifestyle that we were really looking for, while being able to integrate our kids into a Spanish way of life. Amazing international schools. For me, it just ticked all the boxes. And, it's fair to say before we settled on Benalmadena, we knew it was an amazing holiday spot, okay? So if your intention is to spend part of your year here, you're going to have an amazing time. Lock up your property, head back home, come back out on your vacation times. But also, if it's the intention to make it that more permanent place where you're going to base yourself, if you're drawn towards that destination, Benalmadena is definitely a town to spend time considering, because I would personally choose it time and time again. For me, it offers everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree 100%. And I love the idea that for every day, even if you come on holiday, every day you can choose a different restaurant. You can have different food. One day you can have tapas. Next day you could have Indian. And the marina is full of bars and restaurants. It's just, it's paradise. And we get to live here with the lifestyle that we have. And we were very lucky when we relocated that the kids were at a certain age that we had a chance to put them into Spanish school.
Absolutely.
And I think the Spanish schools were absolutely fantastic. Now we have 2 children who are absolutely fluent in Spanish, and just, Oliver's, there's golf academies for there, there's football academies, So for a family and for a place, then, I can't see by Benalmadena, but as I said, I'm biased about that.
No, absolutely. But I think you've hit on a really valid point. If your phase of life is where you are at that stage of, you've done your research, you've spent a little bit of time over in Benalmadena during the summers, maybe you've hired out your property and you've decided that that's where you're going to be based. From a family point of view, from integrating your unit, you won't be disappointed. The schools are phenomenal. I get asked all the time to talk a little bit about, what was it like integrating your kids into life in Spain? How did the school integration go? How did it go, integrating into family life and finding friends, finding a network? And honestly speaking, I found Benalmadena perfect. It is really a cultural melting pot, right? As you alluded to earlier. You have multiple different nationalities finding a way to live in harmony, which is just amazing. So I never really felt ostracized or cast away. I felt it was always easy to mingle, make connections. And I think for us, the phase that we were at in our life at the time, our kids were young enough that we were able to integrate them into Spanish schools, which was a massive advantage. But I think you really need to evaluate individually for you, what are your long-term objectives in Spain? If you're going to go long-term in Spain, then Spanish school is always a wonderful option. But if your kids are a little bit older and Spain is not a permanent stopgap, maybe you might need to look at international schools. But if that is the route for you, Benalmadena has, I think, 6 or 7 phenomenal international schools. You will absolutely find one where you feel drawn to and your kids will feel at home. So for me, only a positive experience when it came to integrating into Benalmadena, establishing our own network and raising our family. And it really is a privilege to live here, and it's something that I would do time and time again.
So we've covered the relocation buyers, but can you tell me, Sandra, what other buyers are coming to Benalmadena?
I think we've talked in detail about families, right? And that's an area that I'm quite passionate about because I've done it myself. And if I can do it with 2 young kids of 10 months and 4, anyone can do it. That's the reality. But it's fair to say families are not the only people that relocate to Benalmadena. We see a lot of retired people, but especially, actually, I think this point is important. Everybody knows that, there's a certain amount of people that carry that dream, that have always wanted to relocate to the Costa del Sol. But since the pandemic and the back end of COVID, what we're starting to see more and more of is people that would have held that dream, but actually they're cashing in and starting that dream earlier. So potentially they're, 6, 7 years away from retirement. Their kids are a little bit older. Their kids have gone to university or have started that next chapter of their life. And they've decided, okay, look, what's stopping us to wait 6 or 7 years? Why don't we actually make the steps and make the plan and put the plan in place to do that already now? We've definitely seen a fair segment of our buyer from the last 2 years are at that stage of their life. I think that's fair to say. Would you agree, Warner?
Yeah, absolutely. They're 2 to 3 years retiring. The man's always like, I'm 2 to 3 years retiring, and the woman's like, she's always like, oh, well, I want to keep on working, and they want to keep that. But yeah, that's the kind of genre that we're seeing. 50s, 60s, coming in, and they've done all their working life in their country, and they just want to enjoy their life in the sun.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're buying their dream home as their initial base to get them started. But what I've also noticed about them, it's kind of their test base. They've kind of come to the realization that that may not be their forever home in Spain. They're dipping the toe with the first property. They'll spend that 5, 6, 7 years, and then the plan is to eventually retire over here. So that retiree segment, they're still there, but they're coming earlier, which is really amazing to see. And I love to see that happening because, it's really inspiring that they're not waiting and they're taking that chance and coming over and getting to experience what we experience in Benalmadena. So that's that segment of buyer, which has been really interesting to watch and evolve. But also, we've talked about families, we talked about the retiree. I think also the pandemic brought another gift with it. People really evolved their ways of working. They started to realize those old corporate days of being chained to your desk at 8:30 till 5:30, that those way of working or those beliefs, they're a thing of the past, okay? So we have definitely seen a surge in, a self-employed profile, more connected to that digital nomad way of working, whereby they're able to work anywhere in the world. They can be self-employed, which is quite inspiring and nice to watch, or they're working with a tech firm or a company that advocates them being able to work anywhere in the world and from home. But I think what's amazing about this buyer is they identify something really superb about Benalmadena, and that's the accessibility factor. So Benalmadena is on the main train line from Malaga Airport. So you've got Malaga Airport to Fuengirola, which is the main train line. The train line over here is phenomenal. And if your property is located along that route, I say well done, because you're getting on your flight potentially in your home location of, let's say, Dublin or Edinburgh or Stockholm, and you're getting to Malaga Airport, you're jumping on the train, and within 15 to 20 minutes you arrive in Arroyo de la Miel train station, and you could potentially walk or get a short taxi ride to your bolt hole. Like, this is huge, and this is a massive advantage for people when they choose Benalmadena. But something I noticed specifically with that digital nomad or that profile that's still working here remotely, that's a huge draw for them, because Malaga is an international airport with phenomenal routes, making it internationally accessible. And I just think that train line is just a real cherry on the top of the cake there, right, when it comes to choosing Benalmadena as your location.
Yeah, I always tell my clients, when they're looking for that area, I say, look, as long as you're on that train line, you could have a 3-hour flight from most countries in Europe, and then by the 4th hour, you're sitting in a bar having a cocktail.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And I think for me, I'm not a massive fan of driving. I'm not a good driver, straight up, full transparency. But I think what happens to me is, I think back to before we lived here, when we were just holidaying in Benalmadena. I wanted to be able to arrive in the airport, and I didn't want this daunting task of having to go to the car hire desk and then jump in my car and trek down to Estepona for 2 or 3 hours. I love Estepona, it's stunning, but it just wasn't on my priority list. And I think when you're evaluating Benalmadena as your location, this is a huge plus. It's a huge draw factor, getting to the airport and being in your...
No, I totally agree. You've got great places on that train line from Torremolinos all the way to Fuengirola. So it takes about 30 minutes each way to get from Malaga Central to Fuengirola, which is amazing, So if people are on those flights, they know that they've only got like a 30-minute commute before they get to the sun, so it's a great opportunity.
The train is cheap as well, which is great.
Yeah, and another buyer that we're seeing now is the professional buyer, them in their 35 and 40s, they can't afford their place back in their home country, and they're thinking about, why don't we buy for an investment over here, because it's a good opportunity that they can rent it, they can use it, their family can use it, and also with the rent income, they could be paying for their apartment.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. That was an interesting profile, especially last year, whereby we started to realise, I'm just going to use Dublin as an example, but it's the same with any capital cities. We started to realise in the analysis through looking at things with our clients that Malaga was about 40% cheaper than Dublin when it was analysed from a cost of living perspective. And we saw a profile of individual that decided, I can't buy in Dublin, right? It's too expensive. I'm going to take my money and I'm going to invest it on the Costa del Sol. But I'm going to still operate my professional business and services from my home country and have the best of both worlds. Jump on an airplane, get to Malaga, get to Benalmadena and enjoy my life. And that was really interesting to watch and see and evolve.
Yeah, we did get a lot of people last year and that looking for that opportunity. The same as the nomad buyers as well. They wanted to kind of use that for the winter months, then rent it out for the summer months, which really it was a no-brainer because they can afford a property here in the Costa del Sol. So it was great, and and the market is fantastic just now with all these buyers, all the different nationalities buying in the area. So it's all good.
I think we need to talk a little bit about as well, just to give some context to anybody who's following along today, to just talk a little bit about the types of properties in Benalmadena and what you actually get for your money. Okay, so Benalmadena is superb, in my opinion, from the perspective that you get more property for your money. Okay, so if you've been looking a little bit further down towards Marbella postcode and that, you'll notice that price tags there are definitely different to what you're going to see in front of you in Benalmadena. So you get more value. Now, look, it's fair to say that prices in Benalmadena have been increasing over the last number of years at the same rate that prices have been increasing in other locations along the Costa del Sol. And how could they not be? It's a phenomenal place to base yourselves. But for property buyers, for people looking for their property here, they absolutely notice and often are initially quite taken back, right, about, God, I can really get more here for my money compared to other locations on the Costa del Sol.
No, I'm totally seeing that. Where we are in Arroyo and the Bonanza area, it's apartment blocks and you can get really good investments there. But there's also amazing areas in Arroyo where you can have, any villas up to 1-2 million euros. With Torremoye is another area where the international school is. When the international school there, that's really shot up. There's beautiful villas there in the surrounding area. And, it's just grown in the last, since we came in 2016, it's just grown dramatically. And even now we're getting El Higueron area where there's going to be a massive village with cycling lanes and live, work and play. So it caters for everybody,
It really does.
So I could have one day a client for 200,000 or have one day a client for €1 million, and villa, and all of them have different stories, which is absolutely amazing.
And I think once you're clear from a buying perspective of what you want and what your life plans are in terms of identifying whether Spain is short-term or long-term for you, it makes our lives much easier in terms of being able to pinpoint that perfect location for you. So let's go back to if you're moving with your family and, international schools are going to be a huge draw for you in terms of where you choose to base yourselves. Often people are coming from the States or coming from a busy European city. They want walkability. That's what they keep asking us for. Parents don't want to be doing the commutes or, the soccer mom and dad routes and runs. They want their kids to be able to base themselves in a location where they can get to an age and it's safe for them to run across the road and go to school, and the same with their clubs. So, once you're clear on your wants and your needs, then it's very easy for us to pinpoint the right location for you. If your plan is to eventually retire over here, you may want to be located close to the train station. You may want to be located close to medical centres. Then you're potentially looking at an area like Torquebrada, where you have the medical centre with amazing translation services, close to the supermarket, you're on the main bus route. Those things are super important. But once you've done that work of being really clear on what you want, we're then really able to get into your psyche and understand, okay, this part of Benalmadena is going to be for you. And it's almost like the domino effect, isn't it, Warner? Once we identify, what it is that you want, all those little pieces fall into place really, really clearly, and voila, the perfect property appears. And I think sometimes people get frustrated with that, the amount of due diligence that we do early on, because it's an expensive mistake when you don't purchase the right property in the right location, believe you me. And we don't want that for any of our clients. We want to take the time up front, do the due diligence really, really well, make sure that you're clear on your needs and wants and your long-term objectives into Spain. And then we want to fit the location piece around that perfectly. So it all just kind of
it's amazing.
Merges together.
It's amazing how, if they follow those steps, how like at the start, they're there couldn't be any properties, but when they follow those steps and they actually know 100% what they're looking for, how quickly they actually find the property that they're looking for.
So it's fair to say everywhere in the Costa del Sol is beautiful.
Aye, yeah, absolutely.
Palm trees, sun, an incredible Mediterranean lifestyle.
And 325 days sunshine a year.
So irrelevant to where you choose on the Costa del Sol, it's beautiful. But for us, Benalmadena is the best place to be. From an accessibility point of view, bus routes, train station, logistics, infrastructure, it has something for everybody. Let's remember the 3 zones of Benalmadena Pueblo, the Marina, and Arroyo de la Miel. Something for everybody, whether you're relocating with a family or whether your plan is to eventually retire here, or you're that young professional, 13 kilometers to the airport. I just don't think you can beat that.
No, you can't beat that. And then put in there the restaurants, the bars on the beach, and where you are in the marina, you just basically take a step over. You're at Torremolinos, but you've got the best beach, I'd say, in the Costa del Sol, because it's just beautiful. And yeah, I think you're totally right, but we're biased.
But I think also from a property purchasing perspective as well, you do have the advantage here of finding something for everybody's budget. It's still possible here to find the 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom walking distance to the beach for under 200,000 euros. But it's also still possible to find that luxury villa close to 2 million. It's just really depending on what your budget and what your needs are. But I'm sure whatever you want, you're going to find it in Benalmadena.
Yeah, totally agree.